Let's see. Good look.
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to News from the Pew, where we take the news from around the world and distill it down to make it slightly less frightening. On this live edition, I believe we are live on the YouTubes and all over the place with a special post greatest election of all elections 2022 edition. I am your host, Rick Barrett, and I am joined by my crack team of people who will analyze things and give you a response. We are joined by Mr. Steve Cunningham from CensusFidelium.tv and, of course, Census Fidelium across all the platforms. Fawaz Yazi, our fantastic traditional hip-hop artist, who you should be following on his Instagram page, Catholic Kings, or just search for Enoch. It's a lot easier. He drops drops tidbits from his album and artwork, which he revealed for his upcoming album in December, which looks awesome. So give him a follow on the Instagrams. We are also joined by Mr. Jonathan Arrington down in Florida to give us a perspective that has a lot of really big words that I don't understand, but makes you smarter anyway. So we are glad to have all of you here, gentlemen. Now I'm actually dead serious about that. I'm glad to have all of you here on this, not really a red wave, not a red tsunami, but kind of like a red ripple. Also, pro-lifers, this is going to be Steve Cunningham's I Told You show because he's been telling you you've been sitting on your hands too long, and we took a bunch of L's last night. In case you didn't know, there was a midterm election last night, and it was supposedly the most important election of our lives. A lot of people were on the ballot. We were being gaslit, I believe, into thinking that there was going to be a 54-seat majority in the Senate and an overwhelming majority in the House. And we'll probably have a majority in the House, but the Senate's kind of a toss-up, considering we had candidates like Mehmet Oz and Herschel Walker underperform in a midterm. But we'll go right around. My first question, gentlemen, you can give me as long or short an answer as you want. We'll start with John. Your impressions from last night. What did you go in expecting? Did you have any expectations? And your view of the performance of the GOP?
Let's see here. I'll try to go with what you laid out there, Rick. So remind me if I end up forgetting something. My expectations were, I dare say, sober. So I was expecting that there'd be more red on the map than last time, than in 2020. And I don't know. I guess that's still, as you say, kind of a toss-up, because we'll have to see. I mean, if the Senate ends up, staying Democrat, then there you go. My realistic expectation, though, for what was going to happen was tempered by the fact that the candidates for the Democrats, I mean, Biden, at least by not showing up a lot and not doing a ton in public, I guess kind of hid his dementia to some extent, unless you were really, really searching for it, and the media did a great job of running cover for him. I mean, what said it all to me was that Fetterman was the chosen candidate after his stroke in May. I mean, if that's what the Democrats are going to go with, then I think we know that they're trusting in the lack of integrity of elections. So, it's there's something going on behind the scenes that I don't think Q or anybody knows completely what it is, but something's there that's just more than meets the eye, right? I don't dare to say I know exactly what's going on, but there's something there. I mean, if Biden got more votes than any other candidate in the history of presidential elections, and if Fetterman just got elected, I mean, come on. The Democrats are crazy, but they're not. I don't think they're. I don't know. I go back and forth. Look, I don't really know. Either the Democrats are really that crazy, or they're so beholden to the abortion lobby that they will do whatever it takes. They will run whatever robot, literally in the case of Fetterman, because I mean it's more a robot than it's him there, in order to keep death in charge, right? And I don't know. I guess my only other thought about kind of puff of air coming out after all this, if it's not something that one of our confreres said in regard to puffs of air coming out after last night, I'd say it'd just be this. The fact that the Republicans weren't more, how should I say, triumphalistic, and weren't more sure of their own moral bearings. That said it all to me. I think the average American Joe and Jane, even giving them the worst caricature we could imagine for them, and I think we could all here think up some pretty rotten caricatures of them, or maybe brutally honest. They want some show of confidence. That's the one thing that I think Trump had going for him the first time around, is everyone said he's going to lose big time to Hillary. I did shake his confidence, or whatever you want to call the, what he was showing on air in all of those pre-election matchups with Hillary. So I didn't see that from a ton of candidates in the little bit that I could catch going out, except for someone like J.D. Vance. I mean, he spoke with confidence, Catholic convert too, which always made me pay a little bit more attention to J.D. Vance than I did some of the others. But he had that confidence and clearly knew what he was talking about whenever he addressed certain issues. So it's things like that, I think, that would turn the average person around to supporting that person, to giving it the time that it deserves to go out and vote. So, or time it doesn't deserve. I don't know. That's just some spare thoughts. I hope I covered half of what you asked about, Rick.
That's what I'm really, John, that's perfect, because that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking just for overall impressions, what you took away from it. Fawaz, same question to you. Overall impressions from last night, especially in your home state of Kentucky. Unfortunately, we're going to get to that in a little bit. That butterfly's not very happy with you either, apparently. But yeah, give us some impressions, my friend.
It's kind of multifold, and I'll try and keep it as brief as I can. First, to start off with the election, my prediction was 52 seats in the Senate, not 54 or 55. I don't think we're going to get that lucky. And 230 in the House. I don't know if we're going to get to that. It was a lackluster performance. I think there's a lot of things that we could look at. Personally, I think the GOP is so pulverized. It is really ripped into two separate groups. I think Trump did a very good job of dividing the party itself. I think he tried to really take the entire party and make it MAGA. What he did is, in the last 6 years, is he's taken the MAGA folks. If Trump's name is not on the ticket, they don't really want to show up as much. But at the same time, if you've got your other side, your McConnell, your McCarthy, and your Paul Ryans, who are running the establishment GOP status quo, the George Bush, Reagan GOP, you got some of those normies who typically are older. If Trump's name is actually on there, or his nominees are on there, they don't want anything to do with it. So you've got this infight among you have infight among the Democrat Party, but I think the Republican Party is really split up in two, which makes it harder to have people, for turnouts, because if you have someone that's moderate, the big establishment, like you had Kemp, you had Abbott, you had DeSantis. DeSantis is a little bit different. You had those guys, because they're moderate and they toe the line with the establishment. They're going to get the $200 million McConnell funding that he brought in. Trump, being, sometimes he just is his own worst enemy. He thinks that his endorsement is enough. He raised $100 million and barely gave any of that money to the candidates that he endorsed, and which were the majority of the candidates that we ended up losing in the Senate. Oz, he endorsed, which was a horrible candidate. Regarding Fetterman, my big issue with this, you could have put a tree stump on there, they would have voted for it, only because there's not many independents and undecideds left. We've just been divided to such a degree, they'll vote blue no matter who. And that's what we've seen. If they want their pro-death state, they're going to vote blue no matter who. Now, let's reverse that to our standards. Now, let's think about this for a second. Let's say Fetterman was very, very pro-life and pro-traditional family, and Oz was not. How many of us would have still voted for Fetterman, regardless of who he is, because we want the pro-life agenda pushed? So let's reverse it and put their enemy in our shoes, and vice versa. I don't know. I'm just putting that out there. So I think they were just so divided at this point. It's so unfortunate. And I think Trump's his worst enemy. He's really divided the party, which made it worse. I think there's probably some integrity issues. I don't want to say for sure, but Pennsylvania, I mean, you got Philadelphia. That's pretty easy to rig. You've got Detroit, which is pretty easy to get Michigan. I think DeSantis proved that when he went in and fixed the election law, so where you could actually have to show up, show ID to vote, and no massive absentee or mail-in ballots because you have to actually show that you're disabled, that you can't go. He went from 30,000 votes winning in 2018 to 1.9 or 1.5 million and won by 20 points. So it goes to show you when the election is actually show up, you show ID, and you vote, the Republicans dominate. And I think that's mainly because the Democrats' message is so radical that they lost some of the black vote, they lost the majority of the Hispanic vote, but now they have a new coalition that we have to watch out for. It's the unmarried women and the young, the Generation Z, which came out in droves because of their health rights, and also their issue with the they promised the, what was it called, the student loan forgiveness. So that they did a good job campaigning, and we don't have a message. What's our message?
Fawaz, real quick,
yeah.
I just want to jump in. That stat that Steve just put up backs it up.
Right.
Unmarried women went 68% for
Right.
the Democratic Party. So that tells you why they want abortion, why they want the contraception, why they want these women single and filled with children, even though they want them aborted because of that. Continue.
That's a good point, and we're seeing the culture and shift to more unmarried folks. There's like more people staying unmarried longer, so that's something the Democrats are really trying to grab. They're doing a good job. What's our message? Honestly, for me, it's the pendulum has swung to one direction with the Democrats. If you're not, Trump didn't go far enough. He's still trying to play this middle road. It's not going to work, and you really want to go the other direction. And really want to say, listen, we believe in traditional family, no abortions. Just put it all out there. Limited government, power back to the states. Does the churches take care of the charity? Just a country that like it's supposed to work. You know, virtue for legislation and virtuous folks. If that's not your message, you ain't gonna win.
Yeah, that is an absolute great point to make. All of that, because you're right. I'll get into this later. I think the myth of the independent voter is just that at this point in time. People know who they're going to vote for, and they know what their supposed values are.
Right.
So Republicans are too busy trying to craft two different messages, one for the base and one for the mythical independent voter, and they're pissing both off. I'm sorry for the language at the same time. So, Steve, the triumph of the Republican Party was not so triumphant. Where everybody putting their eggs all in the basket of Americanism.
Well, I do want to give a congratulations to Anthony DeLuca, who finally won, though he's dead, but he finally won. Congratulations, Anthony. So if you have any questions on how the Fetterman win, they also voted for dead people up in the great state of the People's Republic of Pennsylvania. So congratulations to Anthony. May his soul ever rest in peace, but at least he won. Clown Planet. I wanted to think of when Fawaz was talking about communism and the conscience of the West by Sheen. He has a topic on there, or a paragraph on the attitude towards the family. Because if the husband or wife permits outside solicitations to woo one away from the other, then we shall become a nation. Now, I don't agree that this is a nation, where alien philosophies will infiltrate as communism sweeps away the basic loyalty, which was known as patriotism. If husband and wife live as there is no God, then America shall have bureaucrats pleading for atheism as a national policy, repudiating the Declaration of Independence and denying that all our rights and liberties come to us from God. It is the home which decides the nation. What happens in the family will happen later in Congress, the White House, Supreme Court, etc. Every country gets the kind of government it deserves. As we live in the house, as we live in the home, so shall the nation live. And you think about Garanger talks about that in this last Sunday's write-up, saying because all this power of the people came from the French Revolution. You have no power. The power comes from God alone. The power that the people give to these representatives, we don't have the power to do that. So it's all this warped ideology anyways. So about this red wave, here's Judge Napolitano about an hour ago.
was voting for. Well, my column that comes out tonight more or less explains that. I wrote the column yesterday, obviously the day before I could possibly have known what the outcome would be. The column comes out at 11:59 tonight, but I'll share some of it with you. But before the column comes out, and before I tell you why I think Republicans can be as bad for human freedom as Democrats, I want you to listen to a friend and former colleague, Mark Thiessen. Mark and I worked together at Fox News. He's now a columnist for the Washington Post. He's a staunch Republican and supporter of former President Trump. This morning on Fox News, with my friends and former colleagues Bill Hemmer and Dana Perino, Mark gave about a 90-second dissertation of why the Republicans lost. Take a listen.
We have a situation, we have the worst inflation in 40 years, worst decline in real wages in 4 decades, worst crime wave since the 1990s, worst border crisis in American history, worst gas prices ever recorded, worst food prices since 1979, worst increase in shelter prices since 1984, worst labor shortage in American history, which is fueling inflation, and Joe Biden is the least popular president in the history of presidential polling going back to Harry Truman, tied only with Trump occasionally. And voters looked at that. They looked at Joe Biden. And then they looked at the alternative the Republican Party was presenting them, and they said, no, thanks. I probably spilled more ink in the Washington Post than any human being defending Donald Trump during his presidency. I'm not a never-Trumper, but the election denial put people over the edge. And at some point, the voters said, we don't want the chaos. You look at yesterday, 75% of Americans said we don't like the direction of the country, but they didn't vote Republican. We need to figure out, we need to give the voters of this country who do not want the miasma of spending, they don't want socialism, they don't want this left-wing direction the country's going in, a viable alternative to vote for, and we're not doing it.
I thought that was great.
We need to give the voters a viable...
Be quiet, Judge. Sorry. I thought that was great because he does talk about it, because the abortion issue comes with that. We'll get into that later. They don't have a plan. There's no plan for. They say they'll do this. They say they'll XYZ. We'll slash Obamacare. Guess what's still there? Obamacare. We'll get rid of Social Security back in the FDR terms. Guess what's still there? Social Security. None of these things ever go away.
Supposed red wave turned into a crimson trickle, and though there's a slim chance the Republicans could still take the Senate, this was far from the landslide that many had predicted beforehand. But Ron DeSantis crushed it, increasing his margin of victory and celebrating it with a rip-roaring speech.
We chose facts over fear. We chose education over indoctrination. We chose law and order over rioting and disorder. Florida was a refuge of sanity when the world went mad.
Was this election a referendum on Trump? Trump-backed candidates like Mehmet Oz, Leslie Vega and Herschel Walker underperformed. There now seems to be a split in the 2016 MAGA crowd. Some sticking with Trump, but some saying it's now time for DeSantis. A poll I ran on Twitter is currently skewing heavily in favour of DeSantis, and it certainly doesn't help Trump that he has unfavourability ratings on a par with Hillary Clinton, someone who also kept running for and kept losing the presidency. But then again, several candidates DeSantis endorsed also lost, leading to questions about whether his popularity extends to anywhere outside the Sunshine State. John Fetterman's victory proved once again that for Democrats, the ability to string two coherent sentences together isn't really that important. We've now entered the era of the sympathy vote. Another black pill is Gen Z, which voted overwhelmingly Democrat, more so than in 2020, with many of them perhaps nervous that they'll be prevented from having promiscuous sex and being able to terminate their babies like medical waste. Pretty incredible that we'll make you poorer and less safe, but we'll let you bleep your baby message seems to work for a lot of people. Don't underestimate the power of cringe viral TikTok videos, because apparently Republicans did. The problem Republicans will have with TikTok in 2024 is that it's the most censorious social media platform ever created. They wantonly ban any and all content created by conservatives that gets mass flagged by leftists. But it's not all doom and gloom for Republicans. If they take the House, which it looks like they're going to do so, they're going to stop Biden's legislative agenda. And even if they fail to regain full control of the Senate, at least Democrats won't be able to call them the do-nothing Congress in 2024 and then run a platform on demanding divided government with another Democrat president. So not getting getting the Senate may actually boost Republicans' chances of winning the presidency in 2 years' time. We also learned that 2.5 years of riots, rampant crime, and abject moral degradation doesn't put off Democrats. Apparently they like all of that and they want more, leading again to concerns that America as a single entity won't even exist in 10 to 15 years' time. 73% of Americans are either angry or dissatisfied at the way things are going. And yet from the way it looks now, not a single incumbent Democrat senator or governor is going to lose their seat. How does that work? The bad news for Biden is a CBS News exit poll showing 66% of voters don't want him to run again. But then the failure of the red wave may actually turn out to be good for Republicans because it facilitates Biden running again. The New York Times says it may take weeks to decide who wins the House. Not suspicious at all. Don't question anything though. Just stay off social media and trust CNN.
Stay off social media, people, if you're trying to figure out, are there really issues with votings? Trust your local officials. Trust us here. Trust a news source that you know.
What do you think? Is it?
So don't think for yourselves. There was an article about that during the Rona. Don't think. Don't think. Don't use it. Just listen to the experts. Now, Kim Iverson put out a tweet talking about there might have been a decent amount of GOP votes because LA County and New York, for example, the gubernatorial race, both were tight races and a lot of red votes out there, especially in New York. They thought that beforehand that the GOP guy was going to win. And LA is really, really, really blue. And as she mentioned, she goes, they were purple during this thing. So maybe there was just the other topic got more people vote, which we'll get into afterwards. I thought this video coming up by Carrie summarize everything that I think of with elections.
This country from right-wing nut jobs. The demon rats are destroying America. I'm voting to resist tyranny. No, I'm voting to resist tyranny. What? You're a traitor. No, you're the traitor. I'm saving America from terrorists who want to use government to oppress and control me. Your politician is a lying criminal. Mine tells the truth. My politician tells the truth. Yours is a lying criminal. Fascist, communist, you're evil. Do you hear yourselves? Your extremists mirror images of each other. No, they're clearly the extremists. Your cult flavors may vary, but vying for control of an institution that derives authority through coercion and violence dressed up as representation is more extreme than questioning the system and the results it's produced. Both sides are so riled up because of the legitimate fear of their perceived enemies seizing control of this violent government authority and using it to violate their rights. I only want to use government violence to force my opinions on others because I'm right and know what's best for hundreds of millions of people. What if I don't want to be forced to fund or submit to any government-enforced ideology? Whether they swear to care about bodily autonomy while flagrantly violating it or profess to be anti-government while actively supporting massive government. You've clearly been brainwashed by fake news. And you're both petty tyrants who think you have a right to pick masters for others and take zero responsibility when that fails and people don't like it. Now would be a good time to stop arguing over which flavor of authoritarian dystopian boot tastes better, gagging as they rob your wealth and liberties blind because you're too busy blaming your fellow victims for the crimes and inhumanity of the sociopaths you've been indoctrinated to believe represent you.
Because I'm going with, we've been voting for a while and nothing changes. It's the switching seats on the Titanic. Everyone's focused on DC like we keep bringing up. And no one, you look at South Carolina, we look at even North Carolina. There's 4 or 5 people in North Carolina running for a Senate, and then unabated. South Carolina, same thing. 3 or 4 people, unabated. Governor McMaster in South Carolina, great. He's a blood red state. But if anybody watches What's Up with the Great Reset, he's all for the 4th Industrial Revolution, bringing in the EV cars. They're having EV buses coming in. He's putting stands across all I-26, 85, etc. They will be involved in it. Texas reelected, what's his face? Abbott. He's a 4th Industrial Revolution guy too. So rinse, risk, repeat. Yeah, you might have, your team may have won. You will lose in the long run because 2030, you own nothing and be happy is going swimmingly right down the line. Nothing has changed. United Kingdom, you got the new guy coming out saying he wants UBI. He's also for digital currency. We got that here. So it's kind of like everyone just, hey, you know what? I'm just going to push away the stuff that's really the next subject is really important, but the other stuff that's happening, it's my team versus your team. I just want to win. My team just wants to win so I can wave my flag and all, even though both teams are looking to destroy what you're living in as fast as humanly possible. Back to you.
I'm glad we were able to get both male and female Steve's opinion there on that last segment. So that was fantastic. Jonathan, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, just a quick caveat, because that was a hilarious video with that girl. But you know, I always my little cringe meter goes up when I hear any sort of anarchist or libertarian criticism of authority or coercion, because I think it betrays maybe a forgetfulness, but I don't know. It could end up being something worse out of someone who's not careful to kind of stay attached to Catholic tradition. And I mean, sorry, but law and order and even coercion to do things that you may not want to do, you know, because we live on a earth full of fallen human beings. That's part of the God ordained order right now. And you know, a little bit of Thomistic politics. You know, reading his St. Thomas Aquinas's commentary on the politics, a lot of his stuff on law in the Summa Theologica. It would be, I think, a helpful, how should I say, counterpoint to some of the things that, you know, the girl battling the girl there, the girl Trump version versus the girl, you know, Democrat version, just to kind of, you know, rein in some of those excesses there, because coercion is a necessity in this life. It's actually something that is very often virtuous, you know, and that's something that someone, Steve points this out a lot. Chris Ferrara has tackled before about liberty, the God that has failed. And, you know, a temptation that we're all going to undergo, I think, in the coming years, if it's not killing us right now, is the temptation to want to go the anarchy route, the libertarian route. And I'm sorry, but it's just, it's not Catholic. As you can see, with any sort of confrontation with the popes of the last 130 years or so, and it really even started with Gregory the 16th. You know, there are some, you can find traditionalists out there who will say that Leo the 13th was you know, either a closet liberal or an open liberal. Okay, whatever. But they'll use that argument all the way through our current papacy. But go back and look at Gregory the 16th if you want to. I think, by the way, too, is just another little add-on. I think that's the reason Ron DeSantis is so genuinely popular, which even one of the leftist media groups was talking about how they go to even the big cities like Jacksonville, Miami, Tampa, Orlando. That's surprising to find anybody who'd be for DeSantis in Orlando, because it's a pretty crazy place. Pensacola, you name it, is because he focused on his appreciation of police officers, not to do vigilante justice, but to simply the laws that are on the books, follow them so that people have an idea. This is something that St. Thomas Aquinas is big on in regard to law. Have an idea of what the civil government considers to be right and wrong, so they know kind of what the benefits are to following the laws, and they know what they might face if they don't. And so that's why DeSantis, you know, there was a big kerfuffle here in the county in which I live, in Tampa and in Hillsborough County, when a DA was replaced for saying, I'm not going to follow the laws that are on the books right now. Basically, I'm not going to prosecute based on the laws that are on the books. I think that's why DeSantis is so genuinely popular. And I think that's why other maybe Republicans didn't do as well as they thought they should have, or maybe were projected to be, is that you didn't hear a lot about the whole law and order, how DeSantis, what's one of the first things that got him on the map is when he said, look, during the George Floyd riots, it's not going to happen here, you know, and the media showed it because he's the only person basically going after, you know, lawbreakers in the time when this is supposed to be about, you know, BLM and all this. Well, we see the results. You know, people genuinely appreciated that sort of stand for law and order because, well, I'm sorry, but it's Catholic. And so just, I don't know, a long-winded caveat for some of the excesses of the anarchy and libertarian side.
Well, I'll say this much. I think libertarianism is for children. And I don't know how many people I'm going to upset with that, but libertarianism on its face is it's for children because it's like, oh, I'm going to do me and you do you over. Yeah, that's not how life works.
And
like,
full disclosure, yeah, I'm not for any of the. I follow a lot of anarchist guys. I mean, Corbett's says he's anarchist, but yeah, I don't subscribe to their anarchist position or libertarian ones. I remember I wanted to run for the Libertarian Party back in 2010, and they didn't like me because I was against abortion and gay marriage, and that was before I really embraced the church, the teachings of the church back then. And if you guys seen the Whitney Webb Glenn Beck video, it was a great interview. But at the end of it, you'll see Whitney and Beck both talk about they have no idea who God is, because Whitney believes in some kind of cosmic God, and Beck is now a Mormon. And they both and Becca go ahead and admits that he doesn't care about social issues like he goes for the libertarian idea of, no harm, but you can't, abortion is not a big thing for them. So same-sex marriage is a big thing, not a big thing for them. They're okay. You do whatever you want type deal. It's that whole Jefferson idea of don't break my bones or whatever it is. And it goes back and when Jonathan brought that point up, if you read about Garcia Moreno, libertarians hate that story about the earthquake that happened, and he goes down because there's also articles about the is Scrooge correct and things like that. Being able to raise the money up in a hurricane like Katrina's argument, they're fine with $300 million room because that's the market value. Whereas Moreno goes down there and he sees an earthquake and somebody's jacking up the price on water, and he publicly has them flogged in the middle of the city. And nobody did that again. No one cheated them out because it's cheating them out for what they need. It's the libertarians. It's kind of a lacking of a heart in a sense. The economy is the only thing for them. Money's the market is the God, and the human person can go pound sand in the ways. Whatever the market is, no questions asked. No morals, no empathy, anything like that. So just to clarify, I like the video, but yeah, I'm not I just did one just in case. I didn't, not that said Jonathan was telling I was worried about that, but just want to throw that out there for everyone else.
Well, I don't think anybody here is going to confuse you with a libertarian, Steve, in any way, shape, or form. But I think we all can because there's always that. Also, you can blame libertarians essentially for what's happening in Georgia. Actually, no, not really, because those guys are probably voting for Walker.
Georgia. We was talking about horse manure today.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I don't want to get off on the subject of libertarianism because I think we all agree it's stupid.
We can talk about horse manure though.
That's right, it is. Let's concentrate on, as Steve was saying, the other topic. The reason why we wanted to do this show today and immediately react is that the four of us came on after the Dobbs decision. And we said, listen, this is great that the Dobbs decision has come out and that we are living in a post-Roe society, but that does not mean that we stop fighting for life. And apparently nobody watched our show because everybody stopped fighting for life. And Steve has been telling everybody, listen, in 10 years with the way this is going, all these states that at the state level are going to be pro-death. And I'm sure everybody was like, haha, that's so funny. I'm going to go to this Right to Life fundraiser in Texas with Katie McEnany, or I'm going to go to Washington, D.C. and hobnob with these other people and celebrate the destruction of Roe. Yeah, that's great. 5 were on the ballot last night, including Kentucky. Every single one of them failed. Every single one of them failed.
Miserably.
Kentucky, I think, was the closest one, if I'm looking at it correctly. There was 744,000 to 744,000 said no to a constitutional right against abortion. And then 677,000 said yes. So it's 52-47. Outside of that, everything else, they went down in smoke in Montana and other places in red. Sorry, I'm going to do air quotes. I hate them too. Red states.
Let's go over the other states. You got Kentucky. They want to remove the right to abortion.
Nope.
You have
that did not do well.
Michigan. That was the horrible one.
Well, it doesn't shock us with Whitmer at the top of the ticket on that one. She'll murder a baby in front of you if she had the chance.
Speaking of which, you got 2 females there. 65 females were in the gubernatorial elections yesterday.
Yep.
65.
Too many. That's 65 too many, in my opinion. But what can I say? I'm a misogynist.
That's 65 plus sandwiches, guys.
Well, actually, 65. Every woman for 2 sandwiches. So that's actually like 125.
That's horrible. Yeah.
And that's just for me. I don't know about the rest of y'all. That's just for me. In that regard. But yeah, we're seeing all of these things happen. And what was that? Proposal 3, reproductive freedom, abortion. 2 million Michiganders are like, yeah, let's kill them. Whatever, man. That's great. And I want to throw this question out there. I want to throw this out there. Huh?
Remember Tulsi?
Hey everybody, I was recently in Michigan, my mom's home state, where I had the opportunity while I was campaigning with Tudor Dixon, who's running for governor, to spend some time with Michigan families as well as religious leaders who talked to me about Michigan's draconian Proposal 3 that's on the ballot. I want to tell you a little bit about this because it's a really important question for voters. This does a few things. It amends the state constitution, first of all, overturning a law that requires abortion facilities to be licensed and inspected for the health and safety of women. It includes legal loopholes that allow late-term and partial birth abortions, which essentially is really infanticide. It also overturns a law that requires parents to know if their child is pursuing an abortion or gender hormone therapies. Now, this change to the state constitution will have devastating impacts. And I want to urge Michigan residents and voters to protect women, to protect parental rights, and protect our kids by voting against Proposal 3.
And so that got voted into. Here's California, the right to reproductive freedom.
Well, I mean, in California, that thing was about to get rubber stamped anyway. There was no reason to put that on the ballot.
Montana, did you see that? How about this one?
Yep.
This is to care for infants born alive. So if you read this, establishes that infants born alive at any stage of development are legal persons and require medical care to be provided for any infant born alive after an attempted abortion, induced labor, or other method. This referendum also institutes criminal penalties for any healthcare provider who does not comply. They voted no to that.
Yeah, that's Montana, man. Red areas, you know, that absolutely are okay with the death of children.
And just not on regular ones like that is also you have Wes Moore, who is apparently the only reason why he got elected was because he's black, apparently. He beat Trump back with nominee, blah, blah, blah. And he's basically focused on abortion access the entire time. Here's one of his things.
We are going to make sure abortion is healthcare. And what the Supreme Court did was they robbed millions of women of healthcare. And so this will be a state that will be a safe haven for abortion rights. This will be a state where we will make sure that for both the patients and the providers that they are protected, that we are going to make sure we're putting capital towards the idea of providing, security and protection for providers and for doctors performing procedures, and making sure that women know that they are safe here in the state of Ohio, where healthcare decisions should be made between them and their doctors, not by judges or politicians. And so while I understand what the Supreme Court did, I want to be very clear that the state of Maryland, we will protect abortion rights and we will protect women in this state.
You are now the enemy.
Yep, that's definitive that we do not live in a Judeo-Christian culture or whatever, a culture defined by Judeo-Christian values, right, John? That's a famous saying by the GOP, but no matter where you went on the map yesterday, when life was on the ballot, it got struck down and struck down with authority.
Yeah, again, I'll say except Florida, at least as far as.
All right, except Florida, fine.
Had to get that in there. Yeah, and I mean, I know you guys are probably thinking the same thing. So since you let me go first, and I'll be the first one to say it, but probably echoing your thoughts. If we were just confident in I think the convincing power of truth, beauty, and goodness when we go out there and kind of that's our creed, if you will, right? That these are souls created by God, and therefore they deserve to be saved and loved and treated. I mean, if our side, and which de facto, because truly the Democrats have become demons, and their platform is demonic, then basically the only side we would have left, if we were the Republicans, if we could convince them, or whoever's allowing certain Republicans to run, to simply be bold in saying that we are for the truth, the good, and beautiful in this, and not kind of back away from it in the least, I think we would have had much greater success, and the Republicans would have won more. But again, it's the Republicans didn't want to talk about it quite so much, and so the folks who are going to vote red, no matter what, did that. The folks who are going to vote blue, no matter who, did that. Okay, and so maybe there aren't so many out there who are independents, but my sense is that there are a fair number of folks who, for a long time, voted Democrat, for a long time, voted Republican, but who now are just like, wow, I don't really like Trump. I don't really like anybody the Democrats are offering up there. But someone that can convince me, I'm up for it. They might make the difference. I don't know. But I do know that the current lackadaisical, if you can call it even, efforts and kind of just non-committal attitudes of the supposedly pro-life Republicans, the ones who we can tell when you poke a little further truly aren't. That's a recipe for disaster, because you're not going to save lives, and we're talking about saving lives here. We're talking about doing something with abortion. You're not going to save lives if you're not courageous, if you don't have the virtue of fortitude. And the Republicans that are normally thrown out there are not showing that they would have that sort of courage to die for someone. Whereas the folks who did win, besides in Florida, someone like J.D. Vance, again, I bring him up because I could see him going all in, and he seems to me to be a courageous man. With the fact that he converted this late in his life, and with what would be the political advantages of converting to Catholicism, and the way in which he did it, hard to imagine. That sort of courage, I think, is what would allow someone to win. Now, the guy he was running against may not have been the most impressive guy ever, but still, Ohio. I could see Ohio being like some of the other states that they're close in with there in the Midwest and going Democrat, because, hey, how about UBI to help support me if I don't have any hope of really getting a decent job here in Ohio, or having access to anything I want because I'm not going to have the pleasure of meeting a woman that I'd like to marry. But I think someone like J.D. Vance, and especially his story, I read and even listened to the audiobook version of his life there, and it's pretty impressive. And he's letting people know that, yeah, it's going to take courage to fight the evil here, but we're up for it. We're up for the fight. I think if more Republicans had been like that, for instance, Dr. Oz, if the elections were fair, then I think someone like that could have easily won, even in Pennsylvania. I think that's just my little opinion. So that's all I'm going to offer, from my side there, is I think we're taking some more courage and fortitude for there to be some victories.
Well said. Well said. Floss, your state was one of those states in the crosshairs, and you were out there yelling for a couple weeks, hey, man, go vote, go take care of this. Don't sleep on this. We got to take care of this in Kentucky. And unfortunately, not enough people were listening to you, my man. I'm sorry to see that.
His social media, talking to any guy I can find at the gym in the evening, to friends in parishes, things like that. I was trying to do my part as best as I can. I just got here. Luckily, we didn't codify abortion into our state. It was trying to make it illegal. We got close, and if you look at the map, what they really did is, and if I drive almost everywhere here in Kentucky, and yes on 2 were on law signs and churches everywhere. The problem is the left and the Democrats, what they did, and the pro-death folks, is they went to all the universities. Because if you look at the map, you see all the rural areas, it was all blue, which is yes, for yes on 2. You look at this tiny dot in Louisville and this tiny dot in Lexington, and that was enough people to come in and steal that. I also think that there's that maybe we might be missing this here. I don't know if this is true or not, but I think we won game 1. If we're talking about a 7-game series in the playoffs, we won game 1 with Roe v. Wade, the Dobbs decision being overturned. And a lot of times, I think what ends up happening is when you win game 1, you take your foot off the gas pedal, and the other team comes with a vengeance trying to win game 2. Yesterday was game 2, and they were motivated, highly motivated, while we were still trying to piggyback off of that win a few months back, which I think is horrible because we need to get back in the game plan. Luckily, I think in 24, maybe we can put that back in, yes on 2, in a couple of years. And then maybe we might be able to mobilize enough people to win it and to make abortion illegal here in the state of Kentucky. But yeah, even this goes to show you how impressive the pro-death community is. They can come to a red state like this, which we have a red legislature, state house, state senate, state majority in the Supreme in the House in the state Supreme Court, I mean, we're right everywhere. The rural areas, they're all pro-life here. It's just, but you got those. I mean, if you talk about secession, we would like to secede from Louisville. We'd actually be the top 5 safest states in the country if it wasn't for Louisville. And it goes to show you that they mobilize the young folks. This is going to be the issue right now: is how do you change those hearts? How do you change the hearts of the young folks who are, these young women who have been brainwashed to think that murdering their own children is okay? And this goes to show you how cringe democracy is. We all went out to vote whether we could kill children or not. I mean, what kind of this is democracy. This is what we should be proud of. This thing should be shut down from the very beginning, because anybody with common sense or any decency will tell you this is horrible. It shouldn't happen. And again, where are the churches? Not only where are the churches insofar as getting the vote out, where the Protestant, the churches here, the Catholic churches here, unfortunately, our bishop is more interested in being hospitable to the HGTV community than he is about the pro-life, because there was no mobilization within the churches. And also, where are the churches when it comes to charity? It's like, oh, you're pregnant and you're young, you made a mistake. Here's a forgiveness of Christ. We're going to try and help you as best as we can. You'll see a lot less abortions that way. And when there is help out there from the church, not from the government, it's the church's role to do this. From the churches, from the communities, I think we have a lot to go, lay the ground. And the thing about DeSantis is, and if I may make this point of what the previous is DeSantis is great. I think he knows how to govern, and he knows how to push the buttons when it comes to the social issues, the culture wars. I think he does a good job on that. He's a good job at pushing back. My problem is DeSantis is where he needs to be. If DeSantis leaves Florida and gets the bid in 24, the GOP system is flawed. So he's just going to be another George Bush. He's going to govern the way McConnell wants him to govern. The system itself needs to be turned upside down. So if you get DeSantis in there, then he could start making some changes. That's why Trump did Executive Order Schedule F at the very end of his first term, and that was going to be his agenda for his second term. He wanted to really get rid of 50% of the federal workers, and try to break the federal government down and give the power back to the states. That was, if you look at Schedule F Executive Order, that's what it reads. And if DeSantis gets in there without the structural changes, I'm afraid he's just going to be another stooge for McConnell, because it's going to be hard for him to make any changes from within.
That is well said, Fwaz, in that regard. And so, Steve, you were the guy calling out, hey, you can celebrate all you want, but you're giving up the field of play to the enemy, and they're taking advantage of it. And unfortunately, it looks like your prediction, unless people take this, as Fwaz is saying, like a shock to the system, will be any state that puts this up to a ballot will lose. That they just will lose. That's what we saw it in Kansas. And what was the excuse, Steve? It's a special election. All right, we were telling you, don't let that happen. And guess what? They let it happen.
I want to appreciate you quoting me correctly. That's very professional of you, by the way.
Oh, the hand gestures and everything. I just want to make sure I got it all right.
Now, I'm no prophet on this. This is just, Stevie Wonder could see this coming. There's anybody that just sees what's going on, just like with the reset. You read the books, read their statements, you can figure out what's going on. It's like looking at a cloud and say, hey, it going to rain. It might rain. Yeah, it's got a high chance of rain. Don't forget Vermont codified in their constitution too. That was the 5th. And before them, Rhode Island, by basically executive order by the governor, she codified Roe in their constitution. So we're 0-for-7, I think it is. We're keeping score. Kansas was the first one. 2 million people came out and voted just for one ticket. That should have been the sign right there going, guys, we need to get our game plan together. No. Let's have the Texas party. We're still rock and roll. Roe is dead, baby. It goes back to that clip from Bull Durham. The moment's over. Get back into the game. You had a great inning. Yay, celebrate. Get to it. Just like LSU beat Alabama this past week. What they asked the coach, what are you going to do? Because we're going to celebrate for 24 hours, and we're going to get ready for Arkansas. So you don't see like teams, secular-wise, or use a sports thing. You don't see, all right, LSU, we beat Alabama. Season's over. Even though they got 4 more games, they're getting their mind ready for the next game. Us, on the other hand, we won Roe. We beat Roe. What's plan 2? I don't know. Let's still continue doing March for Life in D.C. They really had no plan. I mean, that's not just.
Let's have Lindsey Graham reintroduce it at the federal level.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the judge in the pot town talked about that with the GOP. They had no plan. They get in, they tell you they tell you X, Y, Z, and nothing happens. You still got Obamacare, you still got big government, you still have the bombings, you still have wars, you still have everything like this. Which go to clown plan. I just finished that earlier before we started. They're predicting that the Ukraine war is just a warm up. This is coming from the Department of Defense, a warm up for the big one. Like they're calling the war like an earthquake about to happen in California. We're just waiting for the big one to hit. Nothing changes. It's just rearranging the seats in the deck in the Titanic. My thing is, okay, we see what's going on. Voting harder doesn't work, except in Florida, apparently. But no, that's federalism. That's a perfect example of federalism. Pennsylvania is so messed up that dead people won. I see guys on the talking heads on the Twitter feeds talking upset at what happened in Pennsylvania, but then celebrating Florida. That's federalism. If you don't like what happened in Pennsylvania, you'll fix it or get out. You don't like New York, fix it or get out. California, same thing. Eventually, these guys are just going to really just kaput. The bottom's going to fall out of these places. So you're in Florida, better keep a stronghold on that. Keep the enemy out of Florida. Keep people getting in there that has virtue and common sense. Why can't we do that in other states? How come we can't get people running for seats in local and state governments with virtue and common sense and being able to do things like this? Why is it always we have to sit back and go, well, this guy stinks, this is terrible, I can't believe it. We have, these the shows online, how bad everything is. We don't do anything. We just sit back and armchair quarterback the next day. Yes, we're doing that. We're doing that kind of now. I ran in 2010. I tried to do something then. I'm going to do it again whenever I figure out where we're going to live. I'm in a rental every other house. Every other year I'm moving. So it's really can't really run for someplace because I don't know where I'm going to be next year. So this is an idea. We have to get involved. Catholics, there's that book, again, Christian Social Principles. It's very Thomistic. That's why Jonathan's great on it. We talked about St. Thomas doing this. We brought up that whole idea. He brought up that whole idea of you take out a law or put a new law in and not convert any hearts. It gets worse. Personally, now I grab my tinfoil hat. Maybe, this is my personal opinion, these next words do not express the opinions of Enoch, Jonathan, Rick, and pretty much anybody else associated with me. Maybe not Seth Fidelli. But what if Trump got these guys in, Roe died. Okay, Roe's gone. But now that ended up creating this, where all the states codify Roe in the state level. Because now, if you have it, no one's fixing it up. Now, if you blanket state, blanket down, you can't move anywhere. But what if they end up picking federalism to do this? Hey, now I know that's going a little wackadoo, I know, but maybe that wasn't the plan. But that's happening. That's kind of what's going on right now. You killed Roe. The steam got let out of the kettle. Everyone chilled out for a little bit. They're still doing the march for some reason. I don't know. Maybe some guy bought a balloon thing they got to give away. But now all the states are literally going deaf. So, and we're not focused on any of that. It's just Kentucky. Should have been an easy one right there. Montana. How do you not vote to help a kid that's born alive? How do you say, you know what? No, I'm not. Yeah, we don't need to care for that. No. All right, California again. What's up with the California churches? Where's the uproar? You're going to be persecuted whether you like it or not. Might as well go down in flames. Call these guys out. Get up. Literally get a little uppity about this. Call out Gruesome Newsom. Tell them, you're not maybe bring up you're not the legitimate authority. I don't know. Garanger writes about that in the thing. When these guys lose virtue, maybe it's kind of like, he almost read like the Declaration of Independence when it says get rid of, abolish or renew the government. Same idea. You got this tyrant out there who's talking about getting rid of your lifestyle. Also, hey, let's kill as many babies as we can. And as for the Great Reset, what does it have to take for you to go, you know what? I'm kind of tired of this. We don't want to live this way. Maybe I don't want LA living, with us. make a movement to get LA, San Francisco, whatever, break up this California kind of thing, like Texas. You can break up into 5 states. California's had secession movements to break up California, even though they wanted to get back on the Titanic just at a different level. But where is that? I mean, there's got to be talked about, because it's not going to get any better down the road. These next few years, getting up to 2029, 2030, especially 2029, you think it's going to be sunshine and lollipops or just a little speed bumps? It's going to get massively worse. Before all this, they talked about, domestic terrorism. Australia came out saying that basically anybody that talks about the government is a domestic terrorist, and that you should call in your friends. Now, again, that's Australia. That's not in these US of A right now, but that could be coming. And then what are you going to do if a priest gets up there and starts preaching against abortion, like that Irish priest a couple weeks ago, or last week or the week before? Everyone, their brothers bamboozled on him, upsetting him for calling out sin as a sin, saying Catholic teaching. What if that happens here in the USA? They'll go after and arrest the priest for hate speech, wrongthink, things like that. We need to start getting, and even pro-life groups need to start getting more out there before those things come into the enacted. We need to start getting people in these local and state localities and states before all that happens. Maybe you can break it up later. I mean, that's what Paul Joseph Watson was talking about, is this analysis talk about there probably won't be an election in 2024 because he says, and he's predicted a few other things, because of the cheating in the midterm elections next week. He says people are getting more upset. Maybe this does break it up. Hopefully it breaks that up earlier. A thing about the cheating and things like that is this isn't new before. Brian McClanahan talks about this in his thing, Rum, Ginger Cakes, and Elections, going back to people would go into elections, and then after they voted, go back and shave, come back in, vote again, go back out, change some clothes, come back in, vote again. Why? There was no driver's license or ID cards back in the early 1800s, late 1700s. The politicians would stand there and give them rum to have them vote for them. They would give away candy, anything to get their votes. There was cheating. There's been cheating going back. It's the American dream. It's as fundamental as American pie, basically, or apple pie, is that cheating goes on in the elections. So if that's the case, what do we think 2024 is going to be? What do you think 2026 is going to be? 2028? It's not going to get any prettier or easier. So forget DC. Because, you just saw it. This should have been a red wave, as the one guy said. It stinks out there. Biden is at the lowest. There's inflation. There's this gas prices. Where's the positive from D.C.? Where is it? None. There's none. It's really the worst administration probably in the state U.S. history. And yet, every incumbent won again. How's that happen? So you think logically, how are you going to, we're going to vote harder in 2 more years? Pass the hookah pipe.
Let me ask you this, gentlemen, and this will be our last question to kind of wrap up this special edition, this election, this post-election special here on News from the Pew. The balkanization, if you look at the map, has taken place. All right. And I'm going back and forth with people. If you live in Michigan, California, Rhode Island, the Northeast, or any of these blue states, even Chicago. People say it's Illinois. It's actually the state of Chicago, because if you look at it, Chicago runs that entire red with a little bit of blue, yet that fat idiot governor got reelected in a landslide after pretty much persecuting the entire state. I know Fwaz did it. He left California to a red state, and he'll fight. And yeah, the thing didn't go his way with this one, but he's going to continue to fight. And at least he has, you can still fight for Kentucky because it's very red. Do you stay in Michigan to fight for it? Do you stay in Rhode Island to fight? Do you stay in Maryland to fight? Do you stay in these places? Or do you try to, because right now it's balkanization that's going to take place. And then after balkanization, it's going to be separation. I think balkanization is the last attempt to try and keep this whole thing together. Do you flee from these blue states to the red, to the safety of the red states? I'm not asking you to give advice to anybody that's listening that could think about that, because I get pushed back immediately. Oh, I'm going to stay and defend my state and do all that stuff. Good for you. Good for you on that one. I'm not saying you should, but also understand unless you're explicitly doing it so you can gain some special favor with God by making your life more miserable and making yourself subject to persecution by those who explicitly hate you. I'm talking to you people in Pennsylvania. The new governor, Shapiro, explicitly hates you.
I forgot about that bum. Yeah.
You know, that guy.
And how did he get his fame? How did he get his fame?
By going after Catholics, by going after the Catholic priests. So if you want to stay in those states, God be with you. I love you. I'll support you however. But John, we'll start with you. Should people, and once again, we're not giving advice. I'm just asking for your opinion. Should people consider leaving these ships that are sinking for safer pastures?
I mean, the curious thing about America is that unlike most other nations, besides you could say a place like Australia, and there are a few other places in the world, but we're kind of a case apart given our history and the various waves of immigration. With the various ways of immigration, our nation, at least as it's called such, United States of America, has different people and groups that even in different states, you got different parts of different states, even smaller states like South Carolina, where a lot of the people have been there for, a century or more. Place where my dad's family grew up in Alabama. I mean, you got folks, a lot of the folks there, I can go back and see relatives who were buried there from the 1700s. Gravestones still there. It really depends on the person. And the way you put it, Rick, is I think perfect about the average person. I think in America, without super deep roots in a particular state, and especially if you have a family that you got to worry for your immediate family. But then there are different families going to have different issues. You may have extended family you're still caring for, and then trying to move, and especially if you're more on the land and living off the land right now, moving is not as easy as it is for us who have jobs that are not really kind of agricultural or farm based in any way, shape, or form. So it'll be harder for Fawaz to move now than it was initially from California. If Fawaz had been a farmer in California, could have gotten a great deal more money perhaps with a larger plot of land. But I mean, your whole life is based on that sort of thing. So it really depends on a person's state in life. And I mean, I know this kind of just par for the course with anything in life, but even more so with moving. And it's what makes, I think, life in America and in Australia pretty particular. But maybe even more so in America because the different waves of immigration is you've got certain people who have a deeper connection to the terra, the ground where they're living right now, where their families live for various amounts of time than other people. And so the toughest thing for us, for my family, has been, well, how do you make friends like that? Because you know that if the going gets tough, these people don't have as much of a connection to this particular land, and so they're going to go. I'm talking about my own family here. It was getting tough to raise kids in Rome. So after I spent a decade in Rome total, but in Italy, 8 years in Rome, 2 in Florence. Well, all right, we can move now. We've got the ability, we can move. 4 years in basically the Denver metro, and we loved it there. Would have stayed there, but it wasn't just the politics, but the expenses. Too much for a family with a growing number of kids who didn't already own. And it's kind of the same way in Florida. I hate to say it, but people talk about lack of income tax. Well, they make up for it with property taxes. I promise you, like 5 times what we'd be paying in the Carolinas or Georgia. But so it's each family is going to have its own set of questions and things to tackle. The difficult thing, I think, for most Catholics, over and above what the good points that Rick already brought up, is that you want to build your life around a good parish. And I talked to some of my buddies. My wife and I tend to make friends with those who are significantly older than us, that is old enough to be our parents or even grandparents. And they just talk about the blessing of being able to walk down the street to the local parish, and there's a sane liturgy where you can worship God and not worry about some of the craziness in the liturgy deforming your children's spiritual formation. So that sort of thing is always in the mind of us more traditional minded Catholics. So much to juggle. So I just say it's kind of a toss up. It depends on the person's state in life.
Good point. Fawaz, you've done it. So, I mean, let me know your thoughts on my question.
Yeah, I don't think California is redeemable. And I can sit there and say, I'm going to fight for my state. In a state like that, we're going to need an intervention from God. Our Lady is going to have to come in and really shape things up. God's going to have to remove some folks, if that's the case. Now, let's say, for example, take New York, for example. Lee Zeldin did better than expected, and he did lose, but riding the coattail of Lee Zeldin's loss was 3 House seats that they didn't expect to flip. So I guess maybe it got to a point. There's some folks in New York who've been diehard New Yorkers who are thinking, like, you know what, maybe let's pull for this other guy who's talking about crime, because I've been a victim of crime myself in New York. That's what probably some families are thinking. Or maybe this was their last chance to write it out and see if this guy was going to win. And, you know, he did pull some victories in New York. It got a little bit more red in the House, but then again, Hochul's still your governor and she's still a lockdown queen. So now do you move, or do you say, yeah, let's see what happens in the next couple of years? My thing is, it depends on where your state is and how much you're willing to take. I just didn't think California was redeemable. I think we have a chance of codifying an anti-abortion law in Kentucky. I think by 2024, if we do it again, I think we can mobilize the people to win. So if you're able to, now let's say, for example, we might get some people from New York or California that have just had it, and they're pro-life and they're Catholic or they're Protestant, whatever it may be. They just had it, and they come to Kentucky. That might give us enough. 30,000 more people can come here. That might give us enough votes to do that. So again, it depends, but it's doable. You just got to start over. New friends. I got more friends now in Kentucky than I did in California, believe it or not. And I've been here for 2 years. It's about being part of a parish. Latin Mass community are great. Everybody's so welcoming, so friendly, so great. I'm just happy to be here. So I'm happy to have land. So if you could do it, do it.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has to have their own factors involved, obviously.
Right.
I'm very stringent on that because I'm a transplant. I'm from Rhode Island. I live in Texas. Best decision I ever made. So yeah. I'm very one-sided on it. John has made great points. Flaz has made great points, and I know Steve's going to make some good points right now.
That makes one of us. There's a line back from the Sheen book. When men and women reach a point where they are no longer interested in watching a seed that they have planted grow or caring for its flower, when they are more concerned about increasing dollars in their bank account than obeying the primitive impulse to increase and multiply, then know ye that a night has dawned when a thing is more important than a person, and here lives must be inscribed on the tombstone of democracy. Beyond and behind all the schemes and blueprints of politics and economics, there is nothing more fundamental to a revival of true democracy than the restoration of the family. And it goes, one priest brought up, because Jonathan and I were talking about this the other day, you see, even the Catholic talking heads will talk about just vote harder, vote harder, vote harder. Trump, vote harder. By the way, Trump put out a tweet pretty much mocking DeSantis about how he got more votes than him back in 4 years ago, whatever, 2 years, whatever.
Well, that's just Trump pride. Yeah. He's just burying his own grave at this point.
Yeah. And anyways, where's the penance? We talk about being able to convert to California. It's doable. New York, doable. Illinois, doable. Each state, doable. Are we willing to put the time and effort into it? And that goes from starting out as, like I'm hooked on Father Abernathy, these church fathers podcasts. And he mentions even with like John Climacus and others, how it was when he does his commentary, how the Dominicans, etc., like St. Dominic, he started the female convents before he got the male, so he get the contemporaries going for 10 years before he got the active part going. So we got to just, in our mind, we got to establish that again. We got to get, instead of the active, are we on our knees, meditating, nocturnal adorations, listening to the lives of the saints, practicing the lives of the saints, fasting? St. Martin's feast day is coming up on Friday. Maybe we do the St. Martin's Lent, start Friday, and go from then to Christmas, and actually do some penance during Advent. And that's why I think it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday is the fast day. So it's not as hard as Lent, but you're doing something penance-wise. Do we do it? It's the whole idea of if you don't do penance, you surely will die. So we can go ahead and say, hey, we're going to convert our area and get pro-life in here. But if we're not sanctified ourselves, who cares? Great. We're at Judgment Day. Hey, I got the DeSantis in, or I got this guy in. Great. Doesn't mean anything. You're going to hell. We got to get that part first in. Then that will clean up that. I had a friend of mine text me up or call me up about starting a rosary rally, and he wanted to do it, which is great. And he wanted, how can I get this for the whole state? That was the first idea. I go, what, dude? Just think about locally. You're at Our Lady of Grace in Greensboro. Start there. Get in the parking lot, get a few guys, then grow. Get a couple more parishes, then get a couple more parishes. Then all of a sudden you have the city. You have the city park or something, and then maybe get like a bunch of bags of dollar burgers from McDonald's or whatever. I don't know. Give it to the homeless guys while you're saying the rosary. Maybe they start saying it with you or become interested in the church. Maybe get with the priests and talk about trying to, when you see the people doing rosaries, then bring them into the church and have the priest do a catechetical thing once a week or once a month, whatever. And then all of a sudden you got multiple cities seeing what you're doing, and then those guys start growing. It's the same way with politics. If we start with that first and work on our neighborhoods, converting our areas, converting our parishes to a stronger area. I mean, people complain about the traditional parishes being in bad neighborhoods. Well, convert the neighborhoods. You can either leave that area or convert the area. So if you got a good area, convert that neighborhood. I know Jonathan tells me stories all the time. He's playing basketball with his kids, and they're giving away miraculous medals. They're talking religion to people. So it can be done. Or do we have the will to it? And then maybe we change our area. It's that grace that we bring in. And guys, you're smarter at theology than I am. Tell me if I'm wrong. If we start becoming holier or not, we'll convert other people around us, and that will sanctify the cities. Maybe you start, again, blowing up not blowing up and blowing up, but blowing up the attendance at your parishes, more people coming in. That's a good thing. And then maybe we get some people running for office after that that are for the Catholic teaching and virtuous and being able to get something out of this, so that we're not having a gruesome Newsom running for office or the entire city of LA, which there's plenty of churches in LA, plenty of Catholics in LA. Maybe we start acting Catholic, start living Catholic authentically without a unapologetic, and don't have to be in your face, but you can be in your face without being in your face, and don't say I'm sorry for doing it. We go out to it, maybe we start doing that. That will change the world.
I get jump in, Fawaz.
Just to piggyback off of that, Steve, you're absolutely right. I think the biggest concern I have, and I get this question sometimes. I get these people, they say, so I was a director of youth ministry for 12 years. And the question I always get is how do you think you did? My answer is always, I don't know. Because youth ministry is not one of those things to where you don't know, because it's not a weekend retreat where you get to determine this person now is living a holy Catholic life. It's what are the confirmation students doing in college when they're out of? Are they still going to mass? Are they praying the rosary? Are they living life of virtue? That's when you know. And honestly, this is one of those things we're going to put the fight in. We're not going to get the benefits of that, but our children might. And I know that's not very motivational to people. People don't want to hear that. They want instant results. We want what's called the constellation of visible return. It's like, this is the problem that I have with the charismatic movement. Of course, I don't want to go that route, but it's like, we have to see the kids cry at a retreat, or we think that we did a bad job, because we have to see the return at that weekend. It doesn't work that way. We have to put the fight in right now, and we have to be okay with the fact that we're not going to see the results until after we're gone, for the sake of our children, and have them take over.
That's a very good point. We have to, part of the whole thing is fighting against the instant gratification that society here in America has conditioned us to. So that's fantastic. All right, gentlemen, I think we're going to wrap up this election special here. I'm going to make a dictatorial decision because I have the authority to. The cry room this week for everybody is the GOP. The GOP gets the cry room for everybody. So nobody gets put on top of that.
Specify that Trump gets the cry room, at least for me.
You can be the king of the cry room. I don't care. He is the king of it, especially with stuff like this. Now that the election in Florida is over and everything went quite well, it should be said that in 2020 I got 1.1 million votes in Florida than Ron D got this year. 5.7 to 4.6 million. Just asking. So it's just the guy is just so prideful. And yeah, it was fun in 2016 and while he was president, but he's just the old guy at the club now. He's just past his prime at this point. He's just got to move on.
It's that ego.
Yeah, it's ego and pride and all that kind of stuff. So he is the king of the cry room. John, I think that's perfect on that. But John, Fwaz, and Steve, Saints of the Week. Do you have any Saints? I know John's going to pick Ron DeSantis, so let's just get that out of the way.
You mean Ron the Sanctimonious?
That's right. King Ron de Sanctimonious.
Yeah, and again, I'll say it's also because he sent out a little tweet, or maybe his wife did, or something that talking about God needs a man who's willing to do something, and there were some Catholics going nuts over this. But the beautiful thing I found about it, we've talked about this before, kind of maybe more low key, but here's a man who's running for office. His wife is supporting him. And so this is the paradigm that I think is actually going to spell victory. Even if a few good women win, and some of the we'll see what happens with Carrie Lake, things like that. But this is the sort of thing that, if repeated with similarly people, would take off. So yes, I'll give him as my saint of the week, because he's trying to lead his family and lead his state as a man should, and he's got the support of his wife purely because. At least from folks who seem to know him, I don't know him personally, but from folks who do, he loves her as Christ loved the church, so he's willing to sacrifice for her, for his children as well, and that's the kind of man we need. All right, that's what we got to be.
I agree. I think he's as close as you can get to a pretty good public figure. Nobody's perfect. I get that. But he's trying the best. I mean, he's supportive of his wife when she went through cancer and all this other kind of stuff. So, good on him. Fwaz.
Nobody on the national level, more on the local level. I'm going to pick a guy named Todd Bird from my parish, who did a fantastic job starting a new men's group out of our parish. We have about 12 to 15 guys coming, where we fast once a month, rigorous fast for the souls of purgatory. We get together, we'll have mass, we'll say the litany, for the souls of purgatory. And this is a men's group that I'm part of now that is really focused on prayer, sacrifice, and fasting. And he's a leader of it, and I just want to give him recognition, because I think he's doing a fantastic job.
Awesome. Steve.
I was going to put her in my cry room because Gretchen Whitmore.
Sure.
But anyways, I would go with St. Tucker Atkins Dairy is where I get my milk from. And Tommy ran for District 3 and won. It was like 2,000 votes to like 300 or 200. But you see how he is? He's not polished or anything like that, but he's got tired of what was going on in his backyard. They were trying to put some kind of mining thing. I can't remember what they were digging up back there. They got tired of it, sick of it, and he decided to run for office, do something about it. So he's just a normal guy, just like anybody else can do in your local state issue. Do it. Just get activated and run for him. I mean, run like he is. So people like that, him and stuff, congratulations, and hopefully it inspires more people to do that.
It ain't much, but it's honest work.
Yeah, and they got a ton of cows. We go down there to get our milk down there. From there, it's a 20-minute drive. Again, we could be lazy, just go down to Food Line and get the processed junk that screwed up your insides. We're going to get the real stuff. So we take sacrifice the 25 minutes to go down and do it and talk to them for about 20 minutes. The kids watch the cows and things like that, and bada bing. So do you want it or not?
It's a very good point, my friend. Well done, gentlemen. I think that's going to wrap up this special edition of News from the Pew. Like, subscribe, and share the News from the Pew. We'll talk to you all soon. And now, always and forever, Viva Christmas.